My name's Jimmy, and you have tapped in to the revolution on Revolution Radio right here on freedomslips.com. Want to welcome you into the microcosm. If you've gotten small enough to get through the door, then you are in with the in crowd. I'm here with Epic Journeyman. I'm here with Billy Ray Valentine. And tonight we're going to get into some information that I think everybody will, at least absorb, as it were. There was a movie that came out in the late 70s, Epic. It was starring James Coburn, right? And it was called The President's Analyst. And it was a great satire, a sarcastic look at the political scene that was going on the times that were happening then. What did you think? We started to get into this when you rewatched it. What did you think about it? As far as like with what you know now, as opposed to watching it, say maybe 20 years ago.
Yeah, it's a 1967 movie, and I watched it, I think, when my dad watched it back when I was a kid. I probably watched it like before I joined the Navy, so I would have been, probably 17 years old when I saw it the first time. And so rewatching it, knowing what I know now, it's amazing because 1967 was a time when all of the implements of societal control, the social engineering that was going on, that led into, culminating in 69, really peaked out then. But from 62 to 69, that time frame, here we are right at the peak of it in 67. And things that you watch back then and let pass by, now it's like watching a movie where they're making all kinds of inferences to things like we would know now, like if it was a movie that hinted at, I don't know, maybe like pick a subculture of some kind and have those little hints, that's really what it's talking about, like secret, signs and symbols, if you will, to let you know that they're really referring to whatever it might be, referring to, maybe a gay subculture, or referring to, communists or whatever it might be, So when we watch it now with what we know, the name of the movie says it all. It's The President's Analyst. And the thing about it is, all these things tie into psychology in some way, and it's really, really interesting to watch now. Yeah, I took a lot away from it, actually. I don't know how much of it was just me reading more into it, with my new eyes, if you will, of the last few years of research, than is really there, and how much is really there. But it seems like there's quite a bit there. What did you think of it, Jimmy?
Well, I've been bringing it up for a few years, specifically because there's a particular scene, basically the premise of the movie, ladies and gentlemen, if you haven't heard of it, if you're not familiar with it, is James Coburn is he's a psychiatrist, and he's working with a couple of patients, and one of the patients that he's working with is a FBI agent. And it turns out that the FBI agent wasn't really a patient after all. He was somebody that was scouting James Coburn to be the president's analyst, because they're looking for an analyst for the president. Somebody that the president could talk to about all of his problems. And so basically what happens is James Coburn gets the job, and now the president is dumping all his problems onto James Coburn, which results in a literally a hilarious rocket ride through the 60s with some hippies. He takes acid. It's all kinds of stuff goes on. Billy, are you with us, brother?
I'm here, brother. What's going on?
Oh, not much. We're so happy to have you with us tonight, man. And so we're starting to get into a little bit about what we're going to be talking about tonight, which is the future and, where we're going as far as technology goes. But we think there's some really great clues in The President's Analyst. Now, I don't know if you had a chance to see The President's Analyst in the last couple of years, have you?
I have not. I have not seen this movie, but I am anxiously waiting for the moment where I get to see it.
Well, here's a really cool thing is we Epic put together some audio clips, and so Epic, I think I want to go straight to the juggler vein on that clip. What was the title of the clip that you had that you sent me originally? Because I have to go back to the call that we were on before to get it.
Yeah, I added it again just right before the shows. It's called The Big Reveal.
Okay. All right. So, ladies and gentlemen, this is going to be the big reveal. Now, did you want to run? Did you want to run some of these other audios first? Did you want to run the real right winger, or did you want to run that other one, Perfect Female? I think we should run the first. I think we should run the big reveal first, and go back to these other ones because they'll make more sense because there's so much background information in this clip. My name's Jimmy. It's in the microcosm. It's Friday night. It's Saturday morning. If you're on the East Coast, it's Friday night in the Santa Cruz Mountains. I'm located in the Redwoods, ladies and gentlemen, and it's a beautiful night. The moon is shining through the fog. At least I think that's the moon. You know, you never know these days. It might be Nibiru. It could be a UFO. I don't know. But all I do know is I'm here with Billy Ray Valentine from the Infinite Fringe. And Billy, before we get into this clip, it's real important. Why don't you let everybody know what you got going on? Because you got an event coming up in New York in October. That's coming up, and it's pretty. It's a screening of a film. Why don't you let everybody know what's going on, man?
Yeah, man. Thank you, man. October 20th. Shoot the Moon NYC. You can find all the details over at eventbrite.com. Just search up Shoot the Moon NYC. You'll find it.
Killer. All right. Well, epic. I'm going to roll this clip here. Here it comes, ladies and gentlemen. This is the big reveal, and the movie is The President's Analyst. And I'll go into a more descriptive discussion about this when we come back. So let's take a listen to what was going on. Now, what was happening here is James Coburn has like snuck off, and he's in the desert. He's running because everybody is trying to get him because he knows everything. He's kind of similar to the Epstein character in a way because he has the secrets of the president of the United States in his hip pocket. And so every single country in the world is trying to snatch this guy. They're trying to capture him so they can, torture him and get information. And so what ends up happening is in the movie, there's something called the TPC, which is the phone company, which is supposed to represent AT&T in the movie. Now, James Coburn gets out, he hitchhikes, and I think he hitchhikes. I forget how he gets to this phone booth, but he's in the middle of literally in the middle of nowhere, and there's a phone booth. He gets in it, and the phone booth turns into an elevator and drops him into this deep underground base where he meets up with this character who's one of the guys from AT&T. And honestly, he looks like an organic robotoid. My name's Jimmy. Comes the big reveal from the President's Analyst. Here we go.
What took you so long?
I had to stop for gas. Where's the good doctor?
He's gone. I thought you took him.
What do you think?
Well, you didn't take him. And we certainly didn't. But, looky here. It wasn't one of those pushy new countries either. Because whoever took him was very sophisticated and dangerous. He took the whole booth.
Who knew he was here?
Only you and me. And you only knew because I called you from town. And your phone's not tapped.
No. But this booth was.
Are you trying to tell me that every phone in the country is tapped?
That's what's in my head.
Don, this is America, not Russia.
What do you want from me?
But who... Ooh.
Hey, so epic. How much... That's like how much further do you got to go before he gets to the underground cavern? Because I don't think I can...
That's it. That's the music right there is when the phone booth is rolling up to the operator at the station, the subterranean base. Yeah.
Okay, cool. Because I don't think I could... No, I think it's going to have to play all over again. There we go.
Hello?
Hi there. Glad to have you aboard, Dr. Schaefer.
Aboard?
We're mighty sorry about any trouble or inconvenience we might have caused you, but I know once we've explained our problem, you'll understand.
Where is this? I mean, where am I? Who are you?
How about that? I forgot to introduce myself. My name is Arlington Hughes. I'm president of TPC.
TPC?
The phone company.
The phone company?
Doctor, do you have any idea how much your phone company spends each year just on maintenance?
No, I've never really thought about that.
Well, I guess many people don't. But those billions of miles of wire and all those exchanges, why, just the maintenance on our thousands of offices and buildings. And that's not even to mention our rolling stock, the cars and trucks, the airplanes and satellites, and then all those fine people who are actually on the payroll to take care of all that. Now, wouldn't it be just grand if we could get rid of all that old-fashioned hardware?
What's this all about?
And there's another thing that's going to come as a surprise to you. There are quite a few people who actually dislike the phone company.
Why have you kidnapped me?
And because of this irrational dislike of their own publicly owned company, they often don't pay their bills and sometimes even damage the equipment. Would you look over here, Doctor? Now, to look at that hand, you'd never dream you were also looking at a miracle in modern communications, would you? Well, sir, let's take a closer look. Thanks to the science of microelectronics, you are looking at a complete telephonic receiver and transmitter. We call it the cerebrum communicator, or the CC for short. This dandy little device can actually perform every function of the old-fashioned telephone and more. And it does it without any costly maintenance. Without telephone poles, without wires, without exchanges, without anything, in fact, except another CC in another location. Now you're probably wondering, why have we made it so small? Because it will be in and powered by your own brain. Fantastic? Well, not quite, no. We merely inject the CC into that part of the bloodstream which leads directly to the brain. Technically speaking, for you doctors, we inject the CC into the internal carotid artery. The bloodstream carries it directly to the cerebrum, where it lodges comfortably in the anterior central gyrus, which for us laymen is simply that part of the brain where it...
I don't know what happened. Oh,
Sounds like Elon Musk to me, bro.
I know.
It's totally Neuralink. It's exactly Neuralink. Even the pathway described is exactly the same through the carotid and up to the brain. Yeah, it's 100%.
When was this?
Exactly
Epic? When did this happen?
1967. In the video, you can't see is it's a little tiny black smudge on his index finger. You know, it's a graphic display, and it shows the microelectronics in this little tiny thing in the finger, right? And so it's talking about wireless technology. It's talking about Neuralink. It's talking about the Internet of Things before it was ever brought up in public discussion. It is the big reveal. It really is, and he lays it totally out right here.
Yeah.
What do you mean? The phone company.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's key. I mean, AT&T and the AT&T switches in a lot of these areas were these rooms that existed that where NSA had their own rooms in there. I mean, these rooms do exist. I've been in telecommunications for the last 30 years. And I'll tell you right now, rooms exist that were exposed, you know, when that whole thing was brought out.
Public, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, in the beginning, Epic, and I mean, you can, Billy, both of you guys can talk a little bit about what went on at AT&T Laboratories, what went on at Western Electric. I mean, you know, these are the companies that built the infrastructure that we communicate on. These are the phone lines that were stretched across the oceans. These are, you know, all these different technologies. A lot of it came out of the telecommunications industry, right, Epic? Right, Billy?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, so I want to point out before forget, because it's actually a pretty cool tie-in to last week's show, if you guys caught that, about THX 1138, that the AI, we don't even call it the AI, it was a computer that ran the whole underground civilization. When they were running through the labyrinth inside the electronic labyrinth, going back to his original USC movie, in that movie, the corridors are running through all these, it looks like switches and server rooms. And that's literally Pacific Bell in San Francisco, right? Was it San Francisco, somewhere there in the Bay Area? And they were getting rid of the analog switches that do the rotary phones and replacing them with the digital touch-tone phones, and that's why they allowed them access and had that area to run in. But it's funny because they mentioned that specific thing right here in this movie. It's like the next line of dialogue about how they oppose digital. Hopefully get to play it. But
what the issue is that you drop that, and you need to drop that again in this chat and this call, because when I go over there to the other call, and I'm playing it from there, when I switch back to this call, it makes that stop playing. So you just send it.
I got it. I'll send it.
Yeah. So anyway, and the other thing, Billy, I wanted to let you know, you might want to hit record on your end, because it won't, for some reason, it won't let me record on this end on Skype. Right. But I am going out live over YouTube. My name is Jimmy. This is Into the Microcosm. We're talking about the president's analyst and how it ties in directly to 2019, to the technology that we see today. Earlier I played The Spy by The Doors. And I want to bring up that, Alexa and all of these items that we have in our houses are spies. These are like the spy in the house of love, Billy, because let me tell you something. These hotel chains jumped right on it when Amazon and all these places said, hey, let me put my device in here. I'll give it to you for free. So all these corporate hotels chains just went ahead and rolled it out. That's what I do, is technology rollout. So basically what they say is, okay, Bob, we got 60 hotels here. You need to go out and install these Alexas in every store, in every single hotel, in every single hotel room. And so if you're staying in a corporate hotel, ladies and gentlemen, you are traced, tracked, and tagged, Billy. What do you think about this telecommunications industry getting completely and utterly out of control? I mean, in this movie, it's called the TPC, the phone company, because they can do anything they want. If they want to put a cell site, if they want to hang a cell site right on your back, they could probably get away with it. I mean, it's literally like that. What are you thinking about these telecom companies and these companies just rolling this stuff out without even talking to anybody?
I think it's incredible that this far back, as when this movie was made, like Epic pointed out, man, that they were telegraphing this whole deal, everything. I think personally, and this is just my opinion, that the agenda was there from the beginning, to control and to spy on every single one. Right? I mean, if the agenda wasn't there from the beginning, at the very least, the idea of this happening was there from the beginning, because they're just rolling it out and telling you this in the cinema, and that's what they use, right, to tell you everything at this point, to reveal their biggest secrets. They just go to the cinema and roll this stuff out. Everybody has a television in their home, just about, in the developed world, and that is a measure of wealth.
Well,
right?
and
go ahead. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, no, I was going to say, and just to to pour gasoline on that fire. I mean, it used to be, now, everybody, assimilated with the TVs, but now it's to the point where everybody's got a phone in their hand, Billy. And that's almost the same. I mean, I remember when cell phones, because I was there when this happened. Mm-hmm. And I remember when cell phone bills used to be $1,000 a month. And people, when they had a cell phone, they had money.
Rich people, yeah,
exactly. And then when cell phones started becoming more available to the public, you'd have these super individuals, these super ghetto style individuals with their phones, making a big production about the fact that they were on the phone, because it sort of signified that you were rich. It was kind of like, the technology had trickled down so far to the public, so now the regular Joe can afford it. And making them think that they're rich.
Well, you know what? To that point, right? Regular Joe can afford it. My iPhone is $1,000. That's what it costs, right? So, who has $1,000 to just throw down on an iPhone right away, right? You finance the thing. You're paying for it for years. And as soon as you take it out of the store, as soon as you buy it and take it out of the store, it begins to lose value. It's a losing proposition for you, right? So what they've done is, what we can see here, not only have they managed to make it more accessible, but the dollar has lost so much value, and they push this up to be so expensive, right? but yet everybody needs to have it. So everybody goes out and gets it. This is the last phone I will ever have. Right. And when it dies, I'll probably dumb it down and get something older. I'm never paying this amount of money for a phone again. Ever.
What I can say about Apple products, ladies and gentlemen, is you can buy Apple products cheap, old ones. Like you can get an old Apple, computer for a couple $100, and that thing is a bulletproof horse. I mean, those things just work and work and work. So I mean, you could have an iPhone 5. You can buy those, pick those up for $50-$100 on Craigslist, and I mean, beyond that, you really don't need anything else. I mean, it's got everything you need. But here's the thing, there was something that happened during the Clinton administration I want to bring up. Okay, it's called the Telecommunications Act. Happened in 1996, and this is when Bill Clinton basically signed away the people's airwaves. Okay, and what happened was AT&T or TPC, the phone company, Epic. Did you drop that clip in here?
I did.
Okay, good. So the phone company, ladies and gentlemen, what was going on is, Billy, in case you guys didn't know, weren't around when this was happening. Hey, Alan Holman, it's so good to see you, man, and we're happy that you're here. We're going to shout out the chat in a second. Ladies and gentlemen, what happened was that they deregulated long-distance communication. So at that point, AT&T pretty much owned everything coast to coast and Western Electric, and you had your Bell system, and that was going on. But what happened was that they went to court and they said that, you got to let other people sell long distance. And so when that happened, AT&T copped an attitude, and they said, okay, well, I'll tell you what, then we're going to stop putting in infrastructure then. We're not going to install anything else. Because if you're going to let people use our lines that we put in and make us let them use it, then we're going to quit. We're going to quit paying to put it in. And so what happened was everybody got stuck with the last mile that didn't exist because AT&T had installed the main lines, all the fiber. There's so much fiber everywhere around this country. It's literally unbelievable. You can make a living off something called dark fiber. We'll talk about it some night. Because if you can find dark fiber, you can lease that fiber out to companies, and they'll buy that space. But point is that the last mile problem is what became a problem. So then what happened was that the coax industry, the cable TV industry, became the big dong daddy of communications because the bandwidth across your regular cable that's going to your house is so much higher than what you could get off regular old twisted pair, this old phone lines coming into your house. So cable TV took off with once Broadcom came out with the chipset that made video possible on the internet. Once that happened over plain old telephone lines, once the coax stuff got added into the mix, that's when the internet really took off and the speeds took off because AT&T at that point, they had no bandwidth. Now they fucked themselves in a sense because now there was no fiber for them to start rolling out this new service that they had. So what happened? What do you think happened? What's the easiest thing to install? Wireless. The last mile doesn't matter for wireless because you have point-to-point, so on and so forth. What do you guys think about that? The signing away of the people's airwaves and turning them in to a commodity to be sold off to the highest bidder. Go ahead, Billy. What do you think about that?
I'm having a bit of issues here. Turn it to Epic.
Yeah, go ahead, Epic.
Well, the thing about it is, it is kind of sinister. I don't know a better word. I'm trying to think of a better word, but I can't really think of one, because we were talking about the phones. I don't want to leave that because there's something there that's really important. You can turn in your old phone. Remember how these contracts work? You can turn in your old phone and you get a new phone for a reduced price, and where you get out of your contract and just apply the money to your new one. People do it all the time. And we know what we know now about data harvesting and data mining and how your data is what's being sold. Your data is what's being sold. So if you've ever looked at an iPhone and you looked at your location data, there's an app on there. Not even an app. I'm sorry. It's in your location settings or privacy settings. But it'll show you like everywhere you've gone, like your whole history. Like you spent 9 minutes driving over to the gym. You spent 45 minutes at the gym. It'll show your history like for forever, the entire time you've owned the phone, unless you turn that off. But we all know that even if you turned it off, it's still accessible to people who have the phone. So that becomes this data acquisition device that knows everywhere you've been, how long you spent on the road, where you go to, what numbers you call, what text messages you've made, what your thought processes are when you make those text messages, who you're seeing at the time, who you called, when you called them, and you give it away. You give it back to them. They harvest all that data, make a ton of money basically off of that, but it's not the money they're interested in. It's your data to predict you and put you in the machine, for the sentient world simulation or something similar to that. So I didn't want to leave that because that's big. that is a big thing. And so, but the wireless is sinister because prior to that being unleashed on us the way it was with that Communication Act and making it okay to be competitive and just, use the airwaves, because the airwaves, it's not private, so wireless, that's the other thing about it. Wireless, people think it's like a private conversation. It's not. Anybody who has the ability to scan that frequency can listen to your conversation. There's nothing you can do about it. It's not illegal, right? So now again, you're giving up another layer of your privacy. And if you looked at terms and conditions in your contract when you signed into that thing, it says it right there, but you don't know what it means because we don't get educated on what that means, right? You just have to read into it and understand that's what it means. But it's not just that; it's the health hazard. We're being exposed to all these, these waves. And yeah, the higher the frequency, the less damage it does if the power is less to go with it. But the more power gets put to it, the more dangerous it becomes. So, it's not research at all.
But let people understand, too. People need to understand what they do and how they sell the people's airwaves. Even though the airwaves are free, like he's saying, they are free in the sense that you can listen to those airwaves. But here's the kicker. How they do it is what they do is they sell bandwidth. They sell frequency ranges. So you get this between this, and you own that. And so somebody like Sprint, they come in and they buy a section of bandwidth. They buy a section of frequency, and AT&T has their section. Everybody's got their section of the spectrum. So what you think about is you think about the spectrum of light like a rainbow. And so each one of these carriers has a color. They own it. They bought it from the government for cash money. And now they own it. And that means that they own that frequency from now until the end of time. And so,
like a TV station that's always transmitting.
Right. And so here's another one now. So no one's really talking about this. So we'll talk about it on this show so people can hear about it and then extrapolate on it themselves. That's why this show is called In the Microcosm, because we're going to show you the microcosmic, and then you can extrapolate that out into the macrocosm yourself if you find it relevant. My name is Jimmy. It's In the Microcosm. Epic Journeyman's here. Billy Valentine's here somewhere there. I see him in the green room. I think he's out.
Here.
You want to jump in here on some of this airwave stuff, because this is important, man. I mean, this is something that's invisible. When I was in the wireless business, we called it FM, okay? And the first F stands for exactly what you think it is, effing magic, Billy, because it's invisible, and I need a $50,000 piece of equipment to even see it. And when you, as a person or as a company owner, and I'll call me in there, I come in there and I wave my magic wand, and the next thing you know, dude, you got wireless everywhere, man. You're blowing internet speeds like you can't even believe.
The invisible part is key, right? Because when people don't see it, they don't think it's there, so it doesn't matter. And they keep right along going, right? So no matter what effects, Epic was talking about the health effects from what I was able to catch. No matter what effects are coming down, people aren't seeing this. They're not physically seeing it. And I've heard people say that, things like 5G, things like that doesn't cost anything. It's not, people aren't falling over and dying instantly. Therefore, it's not a problem. People stick their food in a microwave and eat it, and, it's not a problem. It's all good. They don't see these things. So we can't see all the pollution, for lack of a better term, of what we're doing to the airwaves and what we're being bathed with 24/7. We don't see these things. Therefore, they're out of our consciousness, and it's all good at that point because nothing's happening. But something is happening all the time. It's a big issue.
Yeah, Uncle Bob gets cancer. It just seems like he just got cancer. Like nobody's the wiser. And so it's just like, with the internet and the ability to transmit information worldwide at any given moment, so many things have been revealed that in the past, in and of themselves, as isolated incidents, they don't mean anything. But when you get on the internet and all of a sudden you can put a group of people together that all go, yeah, you know what? I've been coughing up some weird, clear, like plastic stuff that I can barely get out of my lungs in the morning. And all of a sudden you start finding out you're not the only one. You start finding out you're not the only one on a lot of these things. And one of the things you're going to find out is, these signals are blasting and there's nothing anybody can do about it unless you physically work on your house to make these signals not come through. Right? And so, I was in the business for a long time of making this stuff work, because when I was in that business, this was prior to me getting cancer from working with wireless. When I was in that business, I was trying to make your phones work. I mean, that's what I was doing. That's what I got paid to do. People would call me in and say, man, I don't have any service in my 6 buildings over here. Or there's no service in I did all kinds of work for Nextel. So I was in the Federal Reserve. I did work for the FBI. I did the whole entire Stanislaus County Sheriff's Department for Nextel, because Nextel was the only encrypted cell phone that there was. Every other phone, not encrypted. The only one that was encrypted, Nextel. What happened to Nextel? Gone. Listen, because I was working for Nextel, I was doing work for all of the government agencies that we talk about on these shows, because they all used Nextel because it was the only encrypted cell phone. Now, they migrated Nextel off their frequency, and when Sprint took over, they migrated Nextel off of that frequency and migrated them up. And they took over that same 800 to 860 frequency, megahertz frequency, for public safety. Okay, so everything that transmits between a certain frequency is deemed for public safety only. And so that also means that Nextel equipment, what happened to it? You think they just threw it out? Because nobody went in and ripped it out. Because I was involved in the rebanding effort for Sprint. I did 300 cell sites for Sprint. I rebanded every single one of them. I went in and changed the controllers. I changed the memory out. I removed the rectifiers, put new rectifiers in. I did 350 of those when Sprint took over, and they migrated that stuff. But the rest of that gear was still there. So people are transmitting on those old frequencies, on encrypted frequencies that they still have from the day, because they control the frequencies that we transmit on. Now, this whole thing could have easily been avoided. Epic. I'll go ahead and jump here, but I want to say that, everything that we're talking about, all the damage to the children, all the stuff that's going on, this horse is out of the barn. So talking about it now is too late. This all could have been avoided because they could have went that last mile. They could have went fiber directly to the house, to the school, and all that, and everybody would have a super high fast internet without needing a phone in their hand to do it, Epic. But go ahead and talk a little bit about some of these frequencies, Epic. I mean, let me ask you a question. I know you've been around the Navy. Have you ever seen radar literally blast and cook birds right out of the sky?
I was on submarines, but I personally didn't see it, but I heard about it. Yeah, that's true. And in fact, the guy who invented the radar range, it was called the radar range instead of the microwave oven back in the 60s, right? That's how he invented it. They fried some seagulls and stuff, man. And that's the urban legend, but I could totally see that being true, because I've heard that happening from numerous people. And in fact, those domes around a lot of those the radomes, where it's not broadcasting with the antenna just straight up anymore. It's like a golf ball you see on some of these ships. That's because that frequency is so dangerous, right? That they shield it somewhat that way, so the people walking by on the deck and stuff don't get exposed. Yeah, that's a very real thing. Absolutely. And yeah, so, but I do want to add that, like, the thing with the cable is correct 100%. They came up with a way in 1990 that we know of. I mean, that was publicly, put out there, and I want to say 98-ish, right around then, of using electrical wiring, with your 12 gauge wires and stuff in your house, and you had 14 gauge and stuff like that, because that's a big wire. It's not doing anything but powering your stuff, right? And using that as the last mile. And they tested it in Chicago and some other cities to give you broadband internet. And around 2000, it looked like it was going to catch on pretty big, because you just plug this thing into your receptacle and assign it a frequency. And the only reason for that was just to give it an IP address, basically, right? It wasn't that it needed it to transmit the data. Data's coming over the landline, coming over the wire. Yeah, so the fiber was great. That's what we want. That's the highest speed thing. But they're able to use the existing infrastructure from just the electrical power grid, essentially.
Well, and it's interesting, Epic, that you bring that up. If I wish I had Spock to go, fascinating right now, because the thing about that is this bandwidth and these frequencies, that the way things work, the way speed works as far as the internet is concerned, ladies and gentlemen, is electromagnetic fields. They circle around each other, and they have these wires twisted in a certain way that causes the electromagnetic field. So they have a Cat5 cable, which means that cable is twisted 5 times every inch. But when they're running this high-speed internet over literally high-voltage lines, Epic, I mean, there's an internet that exists at speeds people could only dream of, that's blowing over those high power lines, man. And it's going on because stuff is being transmitted, just like you could transmit. I can transmit internet. I can come into your building tomorrow and come in and change out all the light bulbs in your fixtures with my team, and then install some stuff. And the next thing you know, you got high-speed internet running off the frequencies that are coming off your LED light bulbs.
Li-Fi. Yep.
Right? So they got Li-Fi, Billy. They got Wi-Fi. They got Li-Fi. And they got something that nobody talks about, Epic, ultra wideband, which is, basically you can look through a wall with this stuff. I don't know why they're not using it in the ports to scan Connex boxes when they're coming in, because and now here's one more, and this one I know for a fact, since we're talking telecom tonight, we'll go ahead and drop some stuff here that I know nobody's talking about, which is, remember when they had remember when they took the TVs away? They said, okay, hey, we're going to go digital now, right? They said, now you need a digital antenna if you want to get your TVs off the air. Because you still have to, by law, they still have to allow you to get your TV without cable, so you should be able to use an antenna, right? But the reason they did that is because they want to take the UHF and VHF, and they want to sell what's called the white space. What do you know about the white space, Epic? Do you know anything about white space?
Well, now we're getting into the notion of cognitive liberty, because now we're starting to mess with people's minds. I mean, it's not down in that low frequency where data waves, alpha waves, that kind of thing. No, but what we're talking about is, they talk about your hair standing on your head, that kind of thing. We're talking about a zone. When the TV was first made, the cathode ray tube was first invented, and I used to know the guy's name. I can't remember what it was. It was a German guy, and he was. It was at the I want to say 32, but it might have been before that World Fair, and it was about contacting the other world, another world, contacting the undead. That was really designed by Theosophists. It was designed to talk to the the spirit realm, and that's why it was invented. And of course it didn't work that way necessarily, or maybe it did. It was alluded to that in the movie Poltergeist. That's what that's based on, basically, that white noise, right? And so. Yeah, as far as that realm of frequencies, I mean, we're talking it's higher than FM radio, and it's lower than all this stuff we're talking about with microwaves and Wi-Fi. So now you have this whole realm what that means is it travels a lot farther. That's the main thing. It travels a lot farther. It's not, we're talking about 5G or something like that, or even the 2.4 gigahertz stuff we have now on Wi-Fi. It's so short range compared to what a VHF signal can do.
Well,
right?
Billy just wrote an article recently about some technology. And so what I want to bring up before we go to Billy on this is that there is spectrum, like we were talking about earlier, that people have bought. The spectrum of the rainbow. Let's just go there. So, and there's a lot of that spectrum of that rainbow that is not visible to the human eye, but the spectrum still exists. In other words, the colors are there. You just can't see them because your eye doesn't pick that up. Now, it's possible for me to beam that frequency that we're talking about that you can't see. But if I had a laser pointer, okay, I'm metaphor it out for everybody. So if I had a laser pointer, I point it at you, and so I see a red dot on your head. You don't see anything. You see no beam. The only way you'll see that beam is if there's smoke or something in the room. But other than that, you don't see it. So in the spectrum of light that can be beamed to a subject matter like a human being, Billy, I know you just wrote a kick-ass article. Where people can find that over at David Icke, right? DavidIcke.com.
Man, they could find anything I write over there. I don't put it out anywhere else. So anything I write, you can find over there, and it's all on this technology that's slowly but sure, not even slowly, man, very quickly taking over our lives and invading every piece of quote unquote privacy that we have left.
Well, what was with the beaming of the signals? Now we can talk about this and we can dwell on this for a minute because I know a little bit about some of the technology that's been tested. But, where did you go with it? Because I know there's so many places that you do go on the Infinite Fringe every Sunday on Truth Frequency Radio at 4 Pacific. And that's 7 o'clock Eastern, ladies and gentlemen. It's Billy Ray Valentine. But so where did you take it when you were talking about people beaming a light and signal into a skull and exactly making people do exactly what they want?
Well, before we get there, I just want to say what's up to Alan Holman and Rega Girl. What is going on?
Yeah, why don't you shout out the chat, Billy?
Let me get the rest of the chat. I just wanted to say what's up to those two.
Yeah, I did too. Hey, Regla, it's good to see you. I'm so stoked that you're here. So we got it going over here with the revolution. We're knee deep in the revolution on Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com. I'm live over at Into the Microcosm with WITH Jimmy Jean. I am simulcasting the show right now just in case there's any issues. So anyhow, what we're talking.
Let me get the chat real quick, man.
Yeah. Go ahead, Billy.
Rega, what's up? How you doing, Rega? SJ, how you doing? Alan Holman is there. What's up, Alan Holman? BRV and JG, we're in there. Me, what's going on, me? Gerber. What's up, Gerber? Up is there. Christian W27. Oh, what's up, Kristen? How you doing? Wall E, Omega Logos, Choppy, Ziggy 101, Monkey, Crab Cakes, Batsman, 123, and that last one I cannot make out. There was one other one that I couldn't make out.
And there's some that you can't see. If you go over there where it says on the left-hand side of the room, it says visitor list. You'll be able to see actually all the people that are in the chat. Yeah. So, but you can only see so many in this particular chat room. So listen, we're coming up on the break in about 10 minutes here, and when we come back from the break, I've got some clips that I prepared. I've been stewing them all day in a pot. Okay, I started out with some stone soup. All I had was some hot water, an old steel pot, and I was sitting next to the railroad tracks, and I had a stone. I threw it in there, and then all of a sudden, Billy Ray came up, and he threw some celery in there. He had some onions. Next thing I saw, it was Epic Journeyman, and he threw some special herbs and spices he brought over from the islands. And we stewed it all day at a low temperature, ladies and gentlemen. And when we come back from the break, I'm going to throw some clips on the table that's going to be like red meat for my buddies over here, because I'm sure they're going to rip into some of what I got to say about. I have a clip I'm going to run about the debate about the promise of AI. And We're going to jump into a little bit of that on the other side of the break. But in the meantime, Billy, now about 2 months ago or three, no, actually maybe longer, probably 8 months ago, I saw some paperwork about some technology that could be utilized inside of a coffee house.
Mm-hmm.
I could sit next to you in a coffee house and I could beam this signal into your eyeball. And I could make you go over there and buy yourself a latte, a pumpkin latte.
Well, the thing is, right, now the Pentagon announced, right, that they have this technology that they can beam messages into your head, right? And they rolled this out as if it was something new. We can beam messages into the heads of, of targets that we have, like anti-terrorism, and anybody who tries to attack us was trying to, enemy combatants, let's shoot message into their head to tell them to back off.
It's blasphemous Buddha was in there.
What's a blasphemous Buddha?
Yeah, he got missed. He said, he goes, hey, you got missed. He goes, oh, it's all right. I'm used to it.
Hey, man, listen, my vision is so awful, blasphemous Buddha.
Don't worry.
And
yeah, we got.
That's probably why. So my apologies, but definitely didn't forget you and not ignoring you by any stretch. Welcome to the microcosm. Let's get small.
And check it out. Monkey just joined in there too. Monkey.
What's up, monkey?
Yeah, man.
So they're talking about shooting beams into people's heads now at the Pentagon. Thing is, right? They do a little bit of research. This is old technology. It's nothing new, right? And then you see what is it? Waco, Texas, and David Koresh and the Branch Davidian.
They said we're off the air.
Huh?
Yeah. They say we're off the air in the chat. Just keep going because we're recording and we're also live on YouTube. Go ahead.
Yeah, man. David Koresh and the Branch Davidian. But by the way, Studio A is still on the Skype call. So if we're off the air, it's on their end, I think.
Yeah, I don't know. Anyways, my name's Jimmy. If we're off the air, we're back on the air, and this is Into the Microcosm right here. We're knee-deep in the revolution with Billy Ray Valentine. He's letting us know how they beam signals directly into your skull. They don't even have to rent space in your head, man. They can just take space, can't they, Billy?
They just shoot it right in, man. So the Branch Davidian, man, this happened, in the freaking 90s? I think it was 93 that this went down. I'm not sure. I'm sure Epic has a date on it. I'll go to him in a sec. But there was a scientist, I forget his name. I think it's Igor Cernov was his name, Russian scientist that the FBI recruited to shoot messages into David Koresh's head in the form of God. So God was going to talk to David Koresh, and the voice of God was going to be played by Charlton Heston.
Get out of here.
Of all things. And they didn't go with the plan, but the ability to do it was there back then. How long have they been doing this, Jimmy?
They've been doing it a long time. Epic, you want to jump in on this before we got about 3 minutes before the break, and when we come back, I got some powerful information. So don't get scared by my logo. Don't worry about it. We got some information. And some guy was commenting on the logo on the chat over on a video about some of the shows we were doing, and he said that he didn't like my logo because there was lightning bolts on it. Somehow he related that to Satan and light. But let's talk about that, because Satan is light. Satan is if Satan is light, okay, illumination, right? Light. Light is spectrum. Spectrum is frequency. Frequency is visible and invisible, Epic, and they can beam signals directly into your dome anytime they want. So, have you ever been?
There's so much there, man. First, I want to say, get your stinking hands off me, you damn filthy Koresh. Because I mean, these guys wanted to use the voice of God technology. That was Dr. Frey from Cornell University originally, but I actually got it from the Russians, so it might be the guy you're talking about. And the first time they used it and announced it was in the first Gulf War, the first Persian Gulf War. It was on CNN. They're talking about driving the guys out of the bunkers using the voice of God technology to make them think they were seeing Allah, or Allah was telling them to to drive out of there. They also brought out remote viewing in the first Gulf War, and people forget about that. It's amazing. But what we're just talking about the laser technology, you know, I get into conversations, I won't say all the time, but often enough about this idea of optogenetics and how optogenetics, you know, can control your mind. It can give you. Jimmy's probably going to weigh in this later, so I'm not going to spoil it. But you know, how do you deliver it? Because they say, well, you have to have a special protein enzyme. It's going to be in the brain, genetically put there. Well, hello, GMOs. Yeah, there's your delivery system, right? But how is it going to get there?
Or chemtrails, right?
Yeah, right. There's all kinds of delivery systems that make that break the barrier. You know, they call it the blood barrier, but brain barrier. And so, okay, so now that's there. So, okay, we already have that enzyme or whatever in us, right? But okay, well, you need lights directly focused on the neurons in the brain. Hello, the optic nerve and laser beams, right? I mean, you don't have to see that laser beam. We were talking about that earlier. I have 2 sets of laser beams in my room right now on the Valve Index virtual reality headset that are mapping my location data and my hands and everything else and where I am in the room. And I can't see those. And luckily I have this headset on, so they're not going to my eyes, right? But it's invisible laser beams. But you're telling me that those same laser beams, these is called coherent light, is not going straight into your optic nerve and flashing on your brain if that's what they want to embed and bring knowledge, not knowledge, I'm sorry, if they bring a programming with of some kind.
We're going on a break here right now, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Jimmy.
Go to Rad, sorry.
That's Epic Journeyman, and I'm here with Billy Ray Valentine. When we come back, we are going to break out the chainsaw and start chipping away at the beast. Right at the heart of the beast, ladies and gentlemen. We're going to expose exactly what's going on with what's going on. And let me tell you something else. Jeff Foxworthy's birthday is today. And, you know, if you're taking the dog for a walk and you both piss on the same tree, you might be a redneck. We'll be right back, ladies and gentlemen. All right. Let me break in here on this. Stop it. Because there's a bunch of dead air on Revolution Radio. They play like literally at the top of the hour. They play 10 minutes of stuff. So in this second part, I get into some of the... we get into some of the stuff, like we get into the debate of the promise of AI, and I also play this piece about China that's pretty powerful. Yeah, pleasures. You know, it's pretty interesting. There's been quite a bit of shark activity, but the waves in Santa Cruz in the summertime are flat pretty much. There's just, you know, 1 or 2 footers, 3 footers sometimes, but the water's freezing cold, man. So if you're gonna go out there, you know, I mean, they usually have the surf contest here. It's in March. That's when they have the big, just regular surf contest. But then there's Mavericks that happens every time the waves come up. In the wintertime, they have the Mavericks contest, which is kick-ass. I'll probably do something on it this year. So I'm gonna get in the hot tub for a minute. I'm gonna run this second half, and I'll be back in about 10 minutes, 15 minutes. And I'm going to start running the second half of the show. So, yeah, well, so you know what they did? I'll just tell you real quick before I start this. Basically, what they did was they stopped the salmon fishing. They paid the salmon fishermen a amount of money. They said, we'll pay you, but you have to put this GPS locator on your boat. And we'll pay you to have this locator, but not to fish. And so what happened was the salmon population got bigger, and then that made the sea lion and the harbor seal population get bigger. And so that brings in the great whites, because this is a breeding ground up here for the great whites. And so because there's so many more harbor seals and sea lions, because they're interfering in the Monterey Bay with the salmon. Mine's Jimmy. Okay, here comes the second part of the show, and I'll be right back in about 10 minutes, you guys. Stand by. on Revolution Radio. That's right. Got it going on. It's into the microcosm here with Epic Journeyman. Billy Ray Valentine had to exit stage left. And he went out the green room. On the way out, I think I saw him grab I think he took the last bottle of Cristal out of the green room, Epic. I'm not sure. And I think he got the last piece of the last dried salami that was in there. He took that too. I don't know. He mentioned he's going to go party. You know, he does have a family and he does have stuff going on tomorrow, so he can't stick around too long. And I'm super happy and thankful that he stopped by, Epic. But anyways, we're here. We're on Revolution Radio. You can join us in the chat room. freedomslips.com/chat is the interactive chat room. You can join us there. If you have any questions or you have anything you'd like to add to what we're bringing to the table tonight, we're talking about technology. Last week, we were talking about THX 1138, talking about predicting the future of mankind. We really started this discussion with a movie called Metropolis, and we sort of moved forward from there, but we keep seeing the same stuff playing over and over.
Trust the promise.
There we go. The promise of AI. So that threw me off, but anyway, the point being is these movies are all pointing to a future that shows something that's dystopic. And there was a movie that came out, Epic, that seems to describe the future in every way. There seems to be every decade there's a movie that comes out describing this dystopic future where there's the haves and the have-nots. The have-nots are living in the ghettos, and the haves are opening doors with their eyeball scan because they're on the inside track. They're the 6G generation that's just around the corner. But before we can get to 6G, we have to endure the pain. You know, the soon to be living the rest of their agonizing life in pain. 5G generation. And I got this window that is trying to open that I need because our technology is on this video. But for some reason, it keeps opening by itself and just playing. Now I've got control of it, Epic. The wild beast has been tamed, and I have control of the video. Now go ahead, Epic. What about it? Listen, we're moving into a future where it's going to be servicing the machine. And there was a book that came out over 100 years ago that I sent you earlier. I know you read it. What did you think of that book? And tell everybody the name of the book.
Yeah, the name of the book is called When the Machine Stops. And it was written by the same guy who wrote A Passage to India and some of these other books, you know. He actually won some Pulitzer Prizes, not for this book. This book was a novella. It was a short story. But he was very insightful about predicting things that didn't exist yet. He was predicting touch screens and holograms and virtual spaces, virtual reality, really. And the whole concept of the novel, I don't know if I want to get too far into it, but I think I will at least start with the idea that everybody lives in these hexagonal spaces that are basically like 15 feet square. It doesn't give the dimensions, I don't think. It's certainly not more than 20 feet. It's very small. And what it is, that's their own private space. But in their space, they can, mind you, this is 1909. I want to point out this is 1909 when this was written, okay? And so the thing about it is that anything you want, you hit a button, it'll come up for it. It's a virtual button. It's like some buttons are hidden. They're hidden all the time if you're not using them. And so there's this, normally the default setting is this like nicely lit room with a chair in the center that you sit in and a little kind of desk, you know, a study desk kind of thing right there. And then when you want something, whether it be a bath or some food or whatever it is, you reach up into a certain spot where you know that area in 3D spaces, and you hit that area and there's a button there. It'll bring you what you want. It'll bring up a menu. It'll bring you a menu up of what you can, you know, do with those. So there'll be more buttons there to go, just like virtual reality. I'm in virtual reality right now. I'm doing this broadcast from virtual reality. And it's exactly the same kind of thing. So he's predicting this back then. And so if you don't like your room, you go ahead and change the lighting. If you want to have a bath, you bring the bath. If you don't want to, if you want to go to sleep, you bring up your bed, you set the settings of your bed, all that stuff. And it's all right there. And it turns out, though, that everybody who lives in this particular world is driven by what we would call today likes in social media. Everything's about getting a like. So if you funny I say like if you go and you see a lecture somebody else gave, and you liked it and added on to it, well, he gets like basically social karma for you liking the lecture, and you get likes, like just getting likes on Instagram now or Twitter or something like that, and it makes you feel good about yourself, right? And it turns out that the machine is running this whole thing. It's keeping everybody pampered. It's keeping everybody inside this safe space. And while this is going on, the biggest there's no monetary gain to be gathered. It's these likes, the social karma, but it's also about the idea of creating an idea. And I found that really interesting, especially coming from 1909, because learning what we know now about artificial intelligence and how the artificial intelligence lab, I hate to bring up Stanford again, but we've gone over this a lot. In 1962, they were looking for that kind of thing. That's what a lot of this stuff was about, was finding these exceptional, people, these finding Rain Man, I called it once before. You're trying to find somebody outside the norm, has a different way of thinking, to add something extra dimensional, if you will, to the thought process, because the AI doesn't forget, right? Well, once it has that angle, it'll keep that angle and maybe be able to use it to grow. And so the most valuable thing in that society was ideas. So everybody's always trying to find ideas. And the protagonist of the story, her son calls her on this it's like a Vodafone. It's this phone that has the image. Mind, there's no TV yet in 1909 when this was written. They have these blue screens that come up, and then it's a 3D like holographic image. And her son, who she hasn't seen in years, who was born in a test tube, basically, at the will of the machine, calls her and wants to meet her, God forbid, shudder, in person. In person. It's horrible. Got to meet in person. Well, why not talk on the phone, basically? That's what it is, right? It's the phone. I mean, you can talk in virtual space. Why do you have to actually go someplace? She's really inconvenienced, and she's kind of snobbish, but she decides, because she knows nothing different, it's not her fault, right, to hop on an airship and travel basically to the other side of the world. They were in India, and he's someplace, I forget where else in Pan Asia, somewhere up there, but Mongolia, I believe it was. And so, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that was where it was. And so she looks down at this brown earth underneath and is kind of disgusted because she's not in her comfort zone, and because he wants to talk to her and touch her and see her in person. And the story that he tells is that he is about to be the worst possible punishment. He's about to be made homeless. And what that means is there's no more support from the machine. They're going to put him out just on his own. And the reason they're going to do this, and Jimmy can elaborate on this, is because he's gone outside. He went outside without a permit, basically. He found his own way outside. And not only that, he did like a really cardinal sin. He exercised and strengthened his muscles, and that's how he was able to do it, right? Because everybody else is really fragile and really, weak, right? Because all they do is live a lethargic lifestyle. Not almost even lethargic. It's more of a sedentary lifestyle. And this ties into some very interesting concepts about artificial intelligence, because it's the newness. It's the something, like we call it a mental stretch for a person, learning something new. And that seems to be the thing that's sought after the most. It's most highly prized by these creators of artificial intelligence. And I don't mean like, people take that the wrong way, because it's just machine learning, or it's recursive learning, or it's different kinds of learning, or it's narrow AI, or it's what? No. We're talking about is things that actually advance the potential of artificial intelligence, but giving it a new thing. Like even a narrow AI like AlphaGo, which beat the world champion, in Go. It made a novel move. It made it on its own. That's why it's so astounding. It made it on its own, but it did it by playing itself so many times. But what they're looking for is that one thing that it separates it, that makes a new move, right? And that's why ideas are the currency of the world of the machine stops. So I should take it from there, Jimmy. That's how I read it.
Yeah, but I mean, it's interesting that the artificial intelligence laboratory was going, and also that's in '62. But just 5 years later, there's a satire about this whole underground bunker where they're injecting a chip small enough to be injected into your bloodstream. And I mean, it's not like somebody was sitting around. Like I say this all the time. You see these stories and these movies and all these different angles and all this stuff. Can you think somebody's sitting around coming up with this stuff on their own? That that there's nothing, that there's no fodder for real information in any of this fiction. I mean, all you got to do is, I mean, when I lived in Los Angeles, Epic, whenever you're out at a place having dinner, or you're at a coffee house or whatever, having a conversation with somebody, you always got to kind of look around and see who's around you, because there's so many writers down there that are just sitting there trying to find a story to tell. Because, I mean, realistically, man, fiction is just some story that somebody is either personally directly involved in, or they overheard somebody else say, and then they just write it out. And you just, it's just some random story, but if it gets promoted, then it gets into your eye, and it gets into your public eye. It gets into your lexicon of understanding, because now it's out there, right, Epic? So you get your information out there. What's the next step? I mean, constant upgrading and updating of information that goes on the internet. You could post something on the internet, and it brings up something I want to talk about tonight too, because it has something to do with what we're talking about, which is the Dunning-Kruger effect. You know what I'm talking about?
I do.
I can't pull it up right now, dude. I mean, I've been trying to get this AI video that I made going for the last 15 minutes, okay, and it won't play. But so tell everybody about that, because I can't pull it up just to read it verbatim. Go ahead and just tell everybody about it, because it has to do. I think it has a lot to do with the alternative media. I mean, I think, go ahead, but I mean, the gist of it is, it's people being smart, but not smart enough to know when they're wrong or they're not performing right.
Yeah, that's 100% what it is. It's about people who think they're smarter than they are. That's probably the better definition. But they're smart. They're smart enough to know things, right? But they're not smart enough to know their lack of knowledge. Like, there's a famous quote by Jacques Cousteau, I'm sure stole it from somebody else, from the 60s or early 70s, where he says, the more you know, this is the quote, the more you know, the more you realize how little you know. That's a great quote. That's a great quote. I mean, that's somebody who has a thirst for knowledge, and you're like, okay, did that make? And I'm sure he got it from somebody else, but this famous back then, Jacques Cousteau, the famous marine biologist and world explorer. So now Dunning-Kruger is basically taking that the opposite direction. It's like, well, the more I know, great, but I already know a lot. I mean, basically, that's kind of what it means. I'm sorry to laugh that way about it, but I mean, that's kind of how I read it. I mean, when I read about it, that's kind of what it is. It's more like you fake being more intelligent than you really are, because rather than actually learn your mistakes, you deny your mistakes.
You don't even
compensate. Yeah. You're not even aware. You're not even aware. Is the bottom line. You're not even aware.
But everybody else that has the knowledge that you lack can see what a fool you are.
Exactly right. 100%. Right.
Right. And so there's this whole cult that develop around ideologies and philosophies that are built on a foundation of bullshit, because they're missing like half of the equation. But yet they go and make blanket statements and judgments about stuff based on a limited amount of intake of real information. And when you take in information from a jaded source, or from a poisoned well, or from a bias, which is what this really is, this is a cognitive bias. and one that I think is you find prevalent in a lot of these discussions that you see going on the internet, on a lot of these channels. It's not that the person is even a bad person. It's they don't even know that they're not smart enough to know. Now, go ahead.
No, that's right. That's people know me from the Mandela Effect, forums, because I've been there for a while, and that the effect, the Dunning-Kruger effect, comes up a lot as an explanation. It's a not even a veiled insult. It's an insult to people who are saying, well, no, I know this was different in the past, and they bring that up and say it like it's an insult. Well, okay, it's just because they don't know better. They haven't experienced it, so it's okay for them to do that. That's a little different, but it makes everybody in that community for sure aware of that and what the Dunning-Kruger effect is, because you have to look it up if you didn't look it up before. And I think that what we see today, and I know this is political and people are going to be pissed off about it sometimes, but I mean, everything you see that people don't like about Donald Trump is exactly that. It's exactly, him sticking to his guns even when he's wrong about something. I mean, he lies when he doesn't need to, and that's exactly what this is. I mean, it's well, not even lying. In his case, he lies. It seems like he knows he's lying, but maybe he doesn't. The Dunning-Kruger effect means you don't really know you're lying. You're just trying to stick to what you think you know. I think it exemplifies, or a good example rather might be, looking back in the past about how the world or the solar system worked or whatever, and it had a religious connotation to it. And we know these things to be true. The earth was created in 7 days, and so it's a dogma as well in a way. So they're going to latch onto that as if it's a fact, and because they know that's a fact, even though it's not a known fact, right? Well, what is 7 days? What's the definition of 7 days and all these things? That's kind of what it is. It's a little bit like that. It's like it's not even faith based. It's just sticking to what you think you know, and not knowing different.
All right, I had to kill the recording and I had to kill the video stream going out to YouTube so I can get this video clip to play for our Revolution Radio listeners, because that's who we're doing this show for. So, ladies and gentlemen, here comes why you should not trust the promise of AI. My name's Jimmy. It's in the microcosm. I want to thank everybody for joining us. The chat room's bristling with activity, and we'll give you guys a shout out in a bit. Here comes this is part of a debate called IQ2 debate. Don't trust the promise of artificial intelligence.
Cloud or some other digital space is not outrageous. Jaron might argue it's not practical at this very moment, but it isn't outrageous. This is a huge issue. The notion that we can replicate ourselves, our intelligence, our being, our identities, our souls, whatever other word you want to use. So this is not a debate irrelevant to the future. Indeed, it is probably the central debate of the 21st century, for better or worse. Important to remind ourselves of this debate. We are not talking about trusting artificial intelligence. That is not what Jaron and I are arguing against. We're arguing that we shouldn't trust the promise of artificial intelligence. We're not against the technology in itself. That is not the subject of the debate tonight. Jaron talked about the separation of church and state. We talked about this over lunch today. What I think he means is that we need to separate the science from the belief. And all too often in this enormously important debate about whether or not we should trust the promise of artificial intelligence, of smart machines that are indeed so smart that they replicate us as a species, both collectively and individually, Jaron is arguing that we're muddling them up. Jaron is arguing that there's too much state in the church and too much church in the state. And the philosophers are intervening. The philosophers are telling us that this science is good, is moral, is liberating. And that's, I think, the argument that our team is making, or certainly that I am making, is that there's a problem not with the technology, but with its promise, with the ideology around that technology. We already heard a little bit about it from Martine, who talked about something called good versus bad AI. I have no idea how she can make those moral judgments. I have no idea how you moralize AI unless you humanize it, which itself is deeply problematic. But the problem today, I think, is that the philosophers have got hold of this technology and they're presenting it as liberation theology. At least some of them are. We've been through this, of course, before in the middle of the 19th century, in the midst of industrial revolution. The philosophers got hold of that. Marx thought the Industrial Revolution would free us from work, would free us from inequality. He was, of course, entirely wrong. And we have a similar kind of discourse, a similar kind of philosophical debate emerging today about the promise of AI. We're told that this AI will liberate us from our bodies. That's really what Martine is saying, that we'll live forever, that our minds will be replicated, they'll be up in the cloud, we'll never die. If we go insane, if we get Alzheimer's, somehow our essence, our kernel will remain. We're told that AI will liberate us from work because we'll have these smart machines which will do our labor for us. They'll drive our cars. They'll do our medicine. We'll go to an artificially intelligent agent, an algorithm, to be taught. Perhaps one benefit is we'll avoid lawyers, but apart from lawyers, I worry deeply about the impact of
All right, so my name is Jimmy. It's into the microcosm. I just added back the recording
of AI on the professions of the 19th and 20th centuries.
And so now it's getting jammed up. So I'm going to have to kill it. Here we go. I'm killing it so we can continue on. Epic, you want to...
Very professions that represent the backbone of our economy. The problem with this promise is it's not being thought through. It's being thought through philosophically, idealistically.
It's being thought through idealistically, Epic. What do you think? Go ahead.
Well, it's a big subject, and I do think that, yeah, if you're trying to make the tie-in, the Dunning-Kruger effect is being applicable to these transhumanists who are thinking that we can cheat death by just thinking we know that we can download the information from a person's mind through electrical impulses, and they're somehow still going to be the person that they are. Well, that's probably right. I mean, I don't think that we understand what consciousness is. I just think that's a terrible idea. I mean, I don't think it's going to be you if you were able to do that, because that's what this is getting at. I mean, really, what this is about is not just life extension. It's about trying to become gods on earth. It's about, never dying, defeating death. That's really what it is. And okay, so to defeat death, you're assuming that our science is going to be so well understood and so well defined that we're going to be able to actually do that. And I don't think we can do that, because there's, going back to the Jacques Cousteau quote, for everything you know, and I'm paraphrasing now, you find out how little you know. Well, that seems to be an exponential rise, and it seems to be eternal. And I think that by trying to marginalize it, by defining the moment in time, means you're locking people into a cage, in their mind, in a computer, in an AI construct, or whatever it might be. I think it's a horrible idea. So if you're making the analogy that the Dunning-Kruger effect is like that, and that there's people that are smarter than all of us will be, maybe as far as knowledge base and going through the years of institutionalized education and coming up with and becoming pioneers in their field, and they still don't know the big picture, I think you're right. I think that's right, because we are just human beings. We don't know everything. We're not gods.
here's the big difference, okay? So I'm gonna bring this up here, man, and you can quote me on this too in the future. You can say Jimmy said it. like Jacques,
Right on, right
like
on.
like Jacques Cousteau, because listen. So Jacques Cousteau says, "The more I learn, the less I know," and that's what I say because I mean, the more I learn, the less I know. The more I realize how ignorant I am, and ignorant doesn't mean stupid. It means ignoring. It means ignore it, ignorant. So I ignore the facts that I either see in front of my face because I have a cognitive bias of some kind or whatever. So, I mean, everybody's got an axe to grind, Everybody's got their special little issue. Everybody's got their something. But what I'm putting forward is the difference between organic intelligence and artificial intelligence is the more organic intelligence learns, the less it knows. But the more that artificial intelligence learns, the more it knows. And it just exponentially is knowing more and more and more and more to the point where at this point it's literally uncontrollable by any human being to the point where it doesn't matter what you turn off because it'll hide someplace else. I mean, it already knows what you're going to turn off ahead of time. So let's see if I can make this clip play, Epic. Here we go.
Not thinking about it in the context of the real world. We're not thinking about it in the way in which these technologies, and we've already had a great deal of example of this during the digital revolution, that in spite of all the great promise of the internet, and I've written extensively about this, in spite of all its great promise of democracy and egalitarianism and opportunity, it's actually created new elites. The promise of artificial intelligence, these grand philosophical frameworks, they forget about the realities. Jaron already talked about the AI of language being owned and people's labor being appropriated. Who is going to own these platforms? Will it be Google? We all love Google, of course, in some ways, and yet Google is the largest, the most valuable, the most powerful company in the world. Google are the ones who just made the breakthrough when it comes to this artificial agent being able to play Go. Google is pouring billions of dollars into AI, as is Facebook, as is Amazon, as are the other giants of Silicon Valley. Do you trust these guys to benefit mankind? Do you think they care about us? These aren't bad people or bad companies, but they're focused on profit. They're focused on monopoly. They're focused on owning that technology. We haven't thought this stuff through. The promise is scary. The promise is that the technology is moving way faster than we are, politically, culturally, existentially. We're not ready for this yet. We're not ready to replicate ourselves, whether it's in 50 or 100 years. We haven't thought it through. We can't imagine the cultural, the social, the economic impact. We haven't thought about AI in the way it will destroy labor, destroy jobs. What are we going to do when we have these machines that do everything for us? How are we going to create value? How are we going to feed and clothe ourselves in a world where all this technology will be owned by increasingly monopolistic companies? So we can't at the moment trust AI. We can't trust its promise. One day, perhaps, but there are a lot of problems still to be resolved. And for the moment, I would strongly argue that you should not trust the promise of AI. Thank you.
Now, you don't know what you don't know. So technology gets demonized in a lot of ways. But one thing is for sure, that it is moving forward at a breakneck speed. The internet knows no borders. Brains are not contained within the borderlines of the United States of America. And these technology companies are the head. And let me tell you something. I'm going to coin a term. I'm not coining the term, but I'm going to bring a term to the table. And I'm going to add the word complex to it. Ladies and gentlemen, we are the direct result of what is called the behavior modification industrial complex. And Google is at the head of this behavior modification epic. Go ahead and expound a little bit on behavior modification. And I'm going to skip forward because I want you to hear the pro argument for AI by somebody that I think everybody will find interesting. Go ahead.
Well, I think to wrap up what that guy just said, I wish I know I've seen that video before. I can't remember his name. Maybe have it right there, but yeah, that's right in a way. So one of the things that I think that maybe would be a better analogy that nobody's really used. Yeah, so I'll take credit now for this one. It's like watering your lawn, right? If you have an irrigation system with little pinprick holes in it, and it throws just enough water out there to water your lawn, that's great, right? That's awesome. It saves you labor, and it makes you don't have to go out there and have a timer on it. You don't have to do it every day. That's good AI. So in this analogy, that's good AI. Okay, well, it's making our life better. It's doing it more efficiently than we can, and it keeps track of the time. And it's all the simple tasks that occupy our time. It's taken over for us and that's awesome. It's so more efficient than we'll ever be, and that's great. But as you exponentially increase the flow of water, now it's washing away your lawn and your topsoil, flooding your house. And that's what the danger of AI is on-chained AI. We're just learning for the sake of learning, right? And controlling. You can't let it control things on its own. I mean, this is the thing. It's not about it being self-aware, and I think that's what people get caught up in. It's not that. It's what we deign to give it control over, right? So if we give it control over our lawn, and the next thing we know, it's throwing more water out because we've programmed into it that, well, water most efficiently way possible. Okay, well, if you left out a parameter, we meant to say for our crops to grow, but you left that parameter out. Now it's watering the most efficient way possible. Yeah, they were screwed.
Let's get to this pro AI
translation. Right. Now, so we want to pretend that there's this AI behind the curtain that's freestanding, but actually there's millions of people there too. Now, the problem with saying, well, we'll just pay everybody a basic income and then pretend that they're not valuable when they are, is that first of all, it's a lie. Secondly, why is it a lie? Because they're still needed. I mean, this is like crazy.
But he's saying that they're not needed. He's saying the opposite.
Well, he's wrong technically. I'm sorry. I have to pull that on you. The truth is that in order to make machine language work, you have to scrape millions and millions of real translations every single day to keep up with current events and frameworks. So you're factually wrong to say that they're not needed. Now, if someday, like you could say, well, someday maybe they won't be needed, but the problem with that is this premature mystery reduction. I mean, yeah, someday we might be able to float because we understand gravity better or something. And I'm an optimist. I don't want to believe that we'll always be stuck with our current level of knowledge. So in a sense, I'm a transhumanist, but I just believe that it's a fundamental unknown what the timeline is. That's what science is. Science is what we don't know, so we don't know. And so we shouldn't pretend we know. That's lying to ourselves. It's undignified. It's petty. It's silly. It's childish. But also, I'm sorry, but the other thing. No. There's a peril. There's also a great peril in what you're suggesting. If we say instead of taking the dignified path and admitting that people are still needed, if we pretend they're not needed and then we have some agency that doles out basic income to them as if they weren't needed, you really think that thing's not going to be a magnet for corruption? Every history lesson teaches us that that's a huge peril.
I'm going to break in there.
Don't step into that problem.
I'm going to break in there to let Martine come in.
I'm glad that we're down talking about facts and figures here, because I don't think that the facts support the idea that new technological innovations such as AI result in mass unemployment. In fact, there are today, with our global population of almost 8 billion people, vastly more people
All right, so
doing things than there ever were.
So listen, I got a piece I got to play, and it's very important to the discussion, because Charlie Robinson's going to be joining us in a couple weeks. Hey, King, what's going on? Long live the King in the chat room. If you want to join us in the chat room, freedomslips.com/chats, the interactive chat room. Go on over, step on in, get your feet wet. Friendly people, good times, smart people having conversations and adding to the show. We couldn't do the show without him, Epic. Hey, can you see the chat room, Epic?
No, I can't. I can't leave my virtual desktop.
All right. Well, listen, I'm gonna have to stop these streams so I can get this so I can get this thing to play. I'm going to have to stop the streams. I'm stopping these recordings and starting them again just in case, because I don't know what's going to happen. But I know we are getting into some great information tonight here on Into the Microcosm, and we'll be here every Friday night. Right on, King, and Regular Girls here, and Monkey's here, and Me's here, and Me's here, and Gare Bear, and Up, and Kristen W27. Blasphemous Buddha's in here, Walt E, Omega Logos, Choppy, Zippy 101, Crab Cakes, Batsman, Maze Street 139. What's up, everybody? Thanks for joining us. I got to get this clip in, you guys. We don't have much time. So this is a 10-minute clip, but it's worth every single dripping minute of it. So here it comes.
There's no disputing that Shenzhen has become one of the most important places in the world of tech. Nowhere else has quite as potent a combination of tech know-how, cheap manufacturing costs, and sheer speed. But it goes further than that. Living in Shenzhen is in many ways like living in the future. And not necessarily a utopian future. More like the other kind. Consider Zowie. Zowie operates a factory much like any other in Shenzhen. They make cheap smartphones and other electronics. Like other top manufacturers, they've built a complex where workers can live right beside the factory line, work around the clock for a couple of years, and hopefully buy a better life for their families back home. The factories here are clean, and the work is precise. But things are changing quickly, in a way that does not favor the common man and woman.
All the rest of these lines are staffed by about 80 people, but right here there's new machines coming online that are going to build a smartphone end-to-end completely by robots. The end goal of something like this is to get the quality.
The end goal is to get the quality up and the production down. That's what the quality is. Go ahead. I got an issue with the internet coming in. Never mind. Here it comes. I'm stopping these streams on YouTube. It's the only way I can get this playing. The most important thing is being knee deep in the revolution on Revolution Radio. My name is Jimmy. Let me take this moment while this
to bring costs down for less labor, and ultimately to keep China as the manufacturing hub of the world and fend off low-price competition from places like Southeast Asia.
The factory of the future looks like this. It's a closed-off loop where robots pass components among each other and finished products pop out at the end. All those workers have been replaced by one lonely final inspector. It's a strong sign that the future of Shenzhen is less for these guys and more for these guys.
Zowie actually builds these automation machines itself. Behind me are some of China's best and brightest engineers, hard at work building the machines you see out on the floor today, and the ones that are coming tomorrow that are going to automate the entire factory line.
Nowhere will face more turmoil than Shenzhen as the robots rise and send millions of workers to the unemployment line. But it's not just the working class that's facing a dark future. There are dystopian innovations that seem to touch every facet of life here. I ran into one example of this while attempting to rehydrate.
No? Can I use this? No? Okay. Doesn't work? Okay.
After some investigation, I discover what's going on here. And it has to do with these things. QR codes. You know the drill. You scan the code and something pops up on your phone, like a promotion or discount. America laughed these things off years ago, but here, they run the entire economy. Cash and credit cards are history. Instead, you scan QR codes to pay for everything. Restaurants, groceries, even buskers. On the surface, this is all good. It's the easy, convenient mobile payment system of the future. But there's also a dark side. The Chinese government can peer into the two dominant payment systems, Alipay and WeChat, as it sees fit. It's already started tracking behavior as part of a plan to rank citizens and measure how good and obedient they are. The tech revolution may have brought prosperity to Shenzhen, but it's also brought more and more insidious intrusions into people's lives. To dig deeper into life under the Chinese deep state, I've assembled a team of extraordinary foreigners who work at tech startups in Shenzhen. Hopefully a few beers will encourage them to open up about their thought crimes.
Living in a very tightly regulated communist country, does that bother you, or you don't care?
Like the presumption, at least that I got before I came from Australia, you're sort of like moving into sort of like a militarized state kind of thing. Like things are gonna be really intense. But like, you take a beer, you just like walk down the road, hang out in the park, fine.
Yeah.
Do that back in my hometown, Australia, like straight to the cop house.
Yeah.
Like,
But then play spike ball on the grass, and then all of a sudden the cops come and stop you.
You jaywalked and you had facial recognition.
The craziest thing, I actually got this. Yeah, so I was jaywalking in Nanshan, and all of a sudden I got a fine to my WeChat.
was it instant?
It was about 20 seconds after, I guess. And because I had money in my balance, it just went straight out. And this is just the most incredible thing. It just came straight out.
Didn't even authorize
and that was incredible.
That's crazy.
It's true. Try to jaywalk in certain parts of Shenzhen, and the government's facial recognition will spot you. There's even a board of shame showing the faces of recent offenders.
I'm surprised and very, very worried that they have your face in the facial recognition.
They have everyone's though. I mean, when you get across the border, they take that picture. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so it's all in the system. They know where you are.
Scary.
It gets even scarier because Big Brother is watching what you do online too. Most of the websites we know and love are blocked in China, replaced with Chinese equivalents that the government can monitor, a sort of mirror universe internet. I asked my friend Diane, a Shenzhen native, to help break this down. Appropriately enough, she took me to this restaurant staffed entirely by robots.
That's some gnarly looking chicken. Is that chicken?
Robot food.
I wanted you to help me out with one thing. So if I sort of call out a U.S. tech company, can you tell me the Chinese equivalent? Because, you can't get Instagram or anything here, so let's do a few. So Google would be Baidu,
right.
And Amazon.
It's like both JD.com and also Taobao.
Okay,
yeah.
And YouTube?
Youku, 爱奇艺.
Facebook,
we have WeChat.
Yeah. Do you feel like you're in a different universe? All the online stuff is such a big part of all our lives, and it seems like China has created its own world.
Yeah, that's definitely like that. But like I said, for like Instagram, I was surprised to see even Instagram got banned from China, but all the young people, they're there.
Still go.
Yeah.
It turns out it is possible to access the freedom-loving internet here via what's called a VPN, an alternate internet connection that bypasses the government's blocks.
And you don't get in trouble if they see that you're on the VPN all the time?
For personal use, I don't think that's like a big deal. Yeah. A feature will be interesting for how the different world like collaborating together. Yeah, and definitely the young generation, they're not like just, oh, I'm satisfied, just kind of stay inside.
Okay.
Yeah, they're more curious.
Yeah. So the younger generation doesn't want to stay inside. They're way more curious, right? They want to come outside the boundaries of what they've got set up over there, Epic. Now, I got another piece of this chunk I want to throw in here. But jump in here real quick while I set this up. Go ahead.
Well, we only have a couple minutes, and I want to make sure we don't leave too many loose ends. Like part of that right there was great, about how the facial recognition and the total control matrix that's already there is so well developed. I mean, you can only walk on within 20 seconds of jaywalking or playing in the park, you're going to be fined, right? So we're talking earlier about how your phone, when you turn it in, has all your logistical data, like where you went, what you did, all that stuff. It doesn't go away, and that's entered in that same database. And people don't think it's global. It is global. I mean, that's kind of what people aren't. I think people aren't seeing. But so I want to just kind of tie in some loose ends because we didn't get a chance to play more into the president's analyst and finish up on the machine stops.
Well,
and so
before you do, hang on there, man. Hang on there, Buckaroo.
Yeah, I got some good things. We can wrap it up in 2 minutes.
Okay, go ahead. We've got 4 minutes left, and I got some clip I got to play. Go ahead.
Okay, yeah. So the machine stops is the machine stops. The machine stops is all about keeping people involved in trying to make ideas. And in the end, they all died because they were dependent too much on the machine. That 1909 E.M. Forster novella, is so prophetic, and that's what we're building. The other thing is like in the President's Analyst, the theme that everybody misses, I don't say it misses, they just didn't really see it until now, because they watch it differently, is surveillance. It's constant surveillance. Everybody in that movie all the way through is surveilling everybody else, and it's constant. And if we paid attention, and I know people here on Revolution Radio haven't had a chance to know where we're coming from yet, but we've shown this, we call it a breakaway civilization, but the idea is that the surveillance state, if you want to call it that, and it's pretty accurate, I guess. It has been around a lot longer than people think, and that is shown. It's deliberately shown in this movie. I mean, 100%. So yeah, go ahead and catch us up.
Yeah. I mean, I'm just gonna go ahead and skip it. We can come back to it. I did a video that has all this information. It's called The Promise of AI. It's over on Into the Microcosm with Jimmy Jean channel on YouTube, and make sure you type WITH because my old channel that got banned was W, and that's what comes up. But it's over there, and you can get to it. We only got a couple minutes left. So, I mean, the promise of AI, and should we trust it? Well, it's beyond the point now where the horse is out of the barn, and, there's no time to trust it anymore, because now the fact of the matter is it's already out there. It's already out there, just like wireless, and pretty much it's invisible. It knows no borders. It has no boundaries. It does not sleep, and it just keeps learning and learning and learning. It's just like that movie, The Fifth Element. When the fifth element sits down in front of that computer and absorbs the whole history of mankind, and you watch the look on the fifth element's face change from being this being of wonder to somebody who's being powered and subdued by the negativity and the horrors of what's happened and what goes on the planet Earth. My name is Jimmy. You're knee deep in the revolution on Revolution Radio. You can find us here every Friday night at 11 p.m. Pacific, 2 p.m. Eastern. I see Zach Wild. I haven't seen him in a while, and he is looks like he's up in the green room getting a Calistoga epic. You got any last words before we head on out?
Well, I ate all the green M&Ms, man. I mean, the Cristal went away and the dry salami went away. So Zach's got a couple things left. He's got the rye bread and stuff. So we'll see what he has to go on.
Yeah. So, ladies and gentlemen, thanks again. Don't forget, Revolution Radio is completely listener-supported through the contributions that you make. If you can make a financial one, greatly appreciated. If you can't, you can send some prayers to the Nighthawk. It's got some health issues going on, and any prayers you could send over that way would be great. My name's Jimmy. We'll see you next week. Appreciate you stopping by. And this is a good buddy of ours. And, Epic, I really appreciate Revolution Radio. There's a lot of great shows here you can tune into. There's Studio A and Studio B. Tomorrow night, I think Solaris Blue Raven is going to be on late night style. And she's a great host here on the network. So tune in for that, ladies and gentlemen. Other than that, I'm not really sure who else will be rocking the house tomorrow, but you can be sure that your information will be coming in fresh and hot right out of the oven. My name is Jimmy. It's in the microcosm. Zach Wild. We'll see you next week.